But the important thing, as Anayatan says, is to never lose touch. Once we've broken ourselves, broken our notion of, the eternity of this transient entity that we have configured here, then we can live in a way in which we are always in tune with that perfection, with that stillness, with that ultimate balance, right in the midst of our activities. I mean, that's the goal, to find a rhythm in our life that works, and never to lose touch of the infinite. That's one of the things that Icon says, that's the goal. To find a rhythm, and that's why Murshid got mad. I remember when we came back from one camp with Pir Balai, and we were all very high, and he says, "This is not doing me any good." He says, "I'm trying to give you a rhythm that you can use in your life, and I got to spend this morning to bring you back here so you can, do that, because he was looking for us to be more balanced, We were out there and we could rise to the heavens, but we didn't have a job, For example. I want to have a lot of things to accomplish in the next, hour and 15 minutes, so I'm not going to worry about it. But I do want to present some more from some of these texts that we are reflecting on and studying, and also to go over the practices and the practice schedule that we have. And so this is from the lessons that we're studying that I gave you for this coming month. Amaliyat, Spiritual Psychology, from these Githas. The power of thought is sometimes greater than the power of word and of action, although the thought with word is greater, and the thought and word together with action have still greater power. Power of thought is sometimes greater than the power of word and of action, although the thought with word is greater, and thought and word together with action have still greater power. The thought is created out of breath. The word is manifested out of breath. And action is done by the strength of breath. When the breath leaves the body, the action is finished. When it departs from the mouth, the word is finished. When it even passes from the mind, then the thought is finished. Therefore, all the power of thought, word, or action is in reality the power of breath, breath being the very life itself, the current of life, our connection with livingness. The purity of breath purifies thought, word, or action, and the purity of thought, word, or action purifies breath. The purity of breath purifies thought, word, or action, and the purity of thought, word, or action purifies breath. It is for this reason that namaz, wazifa, and fikr are taught in the course of Sufism, because this way that thought, that word, the namaz, the prayer, the wazifa, the prayer of calling on the divine qualities, awakening them in yourself. Fikr, we've been practicing, the refined breath, aware, awake in the heart, rhythmical, remembering presence on it, divine presence. So these things purify breath. They all work. It's a mutually purifying situation, just like you can get on a slippery slope where everything reinforces the falling away of stuff. This is why, in a course on breath, we're doing dancing, we're doing wazifa practice, or we're doing prayer, because that helps bring the breath into a condition that is more natural, more able to connect in these different spheres that we want to connect with. I'm not reading all of the papers I assigned, but I'm going to read just a couple of things. This is from the lesson that I drew from the Gita's on Muraqaba, or concentration. As the sun has rising, zenith, or zenith? Zenith. As the sun has rising, zenith, and setting, so the mind has the above three states, rising, zenith, and setting, coming alternately. Uruj is that state of mind when a person thinks with energy and enthusiasm. I am going to do such and such a thing. This state of mind produces such a force and power in order to create its object that in its excess it produces such a mist that the faculty of reason and justice is often dimmed. The enthusiasm, the rising energy, the uruj, can produce this kind of, by its force and power, a kind of mistiness, such that reason is, you can't find it, and justice is dimmed by the force of that rising impulse. The state of mind, which is Kamal, is perceived during that time when action is being done. Now, he said, okay, Uruj is when you set out. You have that rising movement to act, that intention. I'm going to do this. You bring all that desire into it. And then when you actually are doing it, that action, that is the Kamal. The state of mind which is Kamal is perceived during that time when action is being done. This mist which the energy of mind has produced reaches in Kamal its culmination, which is the end of the joy or sorrow pertaining to that deed, because the excess of force becomes exhausted. The state of mind which is Kamal is perceived during that time when action is being done. This mist, which the energy of mind has produced in the Uruj stage, reaches in Kamal its culmination, which is the end of the joy or sorrow pertaining to that deed, because the excess of force becomes exhausted. Zaval is the state of mind when the power of enthusiasm is lost, the joy and sorrow of the deed are past, but the memory remains. If the impression is sorrowful, the needles prick through the sore of the wounded heart. If it was joy, a tickling and uplifting feeling is perceived, which diminishes and vanishes in time in the entire assimilation in the essence. So the Zaval is that flattening curve at the end into totally dissolving into the essence. The Uruj is the rising force to when now the action is the time when it's like the force that made it rise as exhausted, it's now plateaued, so to speak. And then it starts to fall. And that's you see in the breath, in the inhalation, in the pause at the top, in the exhalation. So, but this is another way of looking at the Kamal and state, because the way he was presenting it before was in a slight coming at it from a slightly different angle. So that's why I'm offering it here. And then he concludes this by saying, the master of concentration is he or she who produces at their will
not only Uruj, but Kamal and Zaval also, and attain self-mastery, when both sin and virtue bow at their feet. It is they who may sneer at the pleasures of heaven and jeer at the tortures of hell. The master of concentration is he or she who produces at their will not only Uruj, but Kamal and Zaval also. So what does that mean? I mean, it's kind of like we get used to, okay, producing Uruj. That's the way we function. Okay, I'm going to screw up my energy. I'm going to build up my energy to do this. So I'm building a, I mean, we all have some, sometimes we I just can't do it. I'm just depressed, to hell with it, whatever, it's not worth the candle, whatever it is, but still we're familiar with this notion of arousing Uruj. But to be able, and sometimes life is asking us to be able to do that, to arouse energy, either in oneself or in a group or in a situation, and how do you do it? I mean, how, think about it in your breath, think about, let's say, arousing the energy to do your practices, for example. How do you do that? What do you get in touch with? How do you do that in your own? Everybody, you can find it. We all have a way of reaching in when it's something that we know we want to do, but somehow or other our state is veiling us from being able to do what we know would be in our best interest to do. And so then there are ways in which we learn to do that. Now suppose, though, you're in a situation where it looks like if it doesn't peak and become activity, it's going to really have a disastrous kind of explosive peaking. So this is when you bring in your sense of how to level things into a Kamal stage, because you're taking into the compass of your breath an arena of feeling. You are able to, through the power of your breath, influence the other breaths that are involved into moving it into a leveling out process. And similarly, when things need to be the falling action, the denouement, the end, of the curve, we need to know. So sometimes by accentuating the exhalation, you see. Sometimes one promotes the zaval and sometimes by amping up the inhalation, one can arouse the aruj. By the balanced breath, by the breath that is balanced in both nostrils, is balanced in between inhalation and exhalation, that has a sense of holding, a lot of conflicting energies, Jamal and Jalal and whatever, in its space and still dominating it with its presence. You can use your breath in these ways. I'm just, making some suggestions as how to approach it, because it's leading us somewhere. And these are from Murshid Sam's 40 Lessons on Breath. Disharmonies arise because of clashes in the rhythm of breath. Disharmonies arise because of clashes in the rhythm of breath. Think about it. Think about the disharmonies that arise in your situation, and instead of attributing it to this person's personality or this thing or that thing or whatever, say, okay, this is a clash in the rhythm of the breath. How would that change your way of responding to that? These disharmonies can be removed by singing, dancing, devotion, and esotericism. The esotericism part would be working with the power of the breath, for example. Therefore, Sufis use wazifas and practice zikr, not only to bring peace and harmony to each person, but also to each group. But to me, I think the really interesting thing for us to reflect on, because the last part is kind of obvious, is the clashing of the rhythms of the breath producing disharmony. Because then you can approach it. Because a person who becomes masterful is able to harmonize and find a harmonious relationship with a whole wider range of human beings than someone who only has one range in which they're comfortable in. And so how to explore that through your own breath is the suggestion that is being given here. Both inhalation and exhalation have an effect upon the atmosphere. And it can be harmonious or inharmonious in relation to the atmosphere of another. You ever been in a, I mean, to me, it's hard to say, but it's like, here we are at the staff meeting at the Northwest Sufi camp, right? All these spiritual people gathered together, meditating, contemplating, but in the silence, we're just getting there, and then you hear it's somebody's little service dog wheezing, breathing, and this seriously, this dog's wheezing breath, which will go on and on and on forever, because that's just the way he breathes. Is dominating the breath of this 20 people here. Interesting. Very interesting.
Do you have some practical advice for such situations?
You gotta go deep. You gotta it reminds me of the story of Shaku Soyen's awakening experience. Because he was the monk who was the first Buddhist teacher to bring Buddhism to America. He was the teacher of Nyogen Senzaki. After he went through all of his training in Japan and Rinzai Zen, and was graduated from the monastery in every way, but he decided he had the idea he wanted to go to Southeast Asia and see the way that the Theravadan monks were practicing, and he got on and he set off in that direction on a boat. And the boat ran into what they call the doldrums, where there was no wind, nothing, and they sat for days in this place, which was infested with mosquitoes. And here he is sitting on deck with all the other people, and the mosquitoes are really, he's a monk. He's got on the monks. He's exposed, the mosquitoes are really irritating him, much more than the wheezing dog, and so he goes deep. He says, he just says, okay. He said, and instead of fighting it, he throws open his robe, and he goes into the deep oceanic meditation, the next thing he knows, some hours, a long time later, he comes back into self-awareness because it started to rain, and he looks down in front of him, and there are all these red berries everywhere in front of him. And these are the bodies of the mosquitoes that have gorged themselves on himself.
Often in the rain.
fallen off, died, you know, and there they are all in front of me. But now, you know, but you know, it was. It comes up. I mean, you know, I mean, because really, I mean, if our level of awareness is being agitated in some fundamental way, and we're masterfully working on the spiritual path and meditatively, we got to go deeper. And I mean, here's a great example of you know, of how you know, an awakened being might approach that. You know, I mean, what's your other choice?
Deep.
Huh?
Deep.
Deep, yeah. This is pre-deep.
Floating water.
Yeah, you don't have to. I mean, yeah, other than you're getting more and more agitated, breaking your speaker, doing all this stuff, harming yourself, getting more and more agitated. Okay.
Let's not think about that.
But I got off the subject. Both inhalation and exhalation have an effect upon the atmosphere, and it can be harmonious or inharmonious in relation to the atmosphere of another. But when the etheric element is present, it transmutes the nafs, the ego mind, and prevents inharmony. The etheric breath is developed through training and grace.